I arrived at the small airfield outside the village of Ashford in August 1943, just past midnight. The moon was hiding behind thick clouds, and the damp chill of the English summer night nipped at my skin beneath my worn leather jacket. My name's Edward Clark, and I'm the Chief Aeronautical Engineer assigned to the Royal Air Force's Technical Intelligence Unit. Tonight, I was about to see something that would change everything I thought I knew about the war. The captured P-47 Thunderbolt sat on the tarmac like a behemoth fallen from the sky, an enormous, ungainly monster with the sleek, aerodynamic grace of a brick. Its bulky fuselage, wrapped around a monstrous radial engine, looked absurd, like a flying milk bottle someone forgot to throw away. Squadron men had nicknamed it the Flying Tank, and at first glance it was easy to see why. But I wasn't here for first impressions or jokes about its girth. I was here to understand the beating heart beneath that clumsy exterior. As I approached, a young technician named James, barely out of his teens, handed me a flashlight. "It's a beast, sir," he said, eyes wide. "But I reckon it's got secrets." I smiled, the kind of smile that hides a knot in your stomach. "Secrets indeed, James. Let's see what she's hiding." The first thing I did was peel back the cowling around that colossal Pratt & Whitney R2800 double Wasp engine. The engine was a marvel of engineering. 18 cylinders arranged in 2 perfect rows, like soldiers standing at attention. The metal gleamed under my flashlight, precision machined to tolerances that German factories could only dream of. I traced my fingers over the smooth aluminum, feeling the cold confidence of American industrial might. I muttered numbers under my breath, scribbling furiously in my notebook. This engine was pushing at least 2,000 horsepower, maybe more, thanks to the intricate turbocharger system tucked away in the fuselage. For comparison, our Spitfire's Merlin engines were powerful, yes, but nowhere near this level. The British had quality, but the Americans had quantity and engineering genius combined. James pointed to the cylinders. "Look at this, sir. Each one can be removed separately. If one's shot up, they just swap it out. No fuss." I nodded slowly, the weight of that revelation settling on me. Faster repairs, more time in the air, less downtime. This machine was designed for the war we feared but hoped would never come. But then I saw it, the turbocharger system, a complex web of ducting twisting through the frame, harnessing exhaust gases to spin a turbine at breakneck speeds. It was a technological nightmare for us to replicate, requiring materials and precision we simply didn't have. The Germans had tried turbochargers, but this was a leap beyond imagination. I looked up at the massive aircraft again, feeling a cold dread spread through me. The P-47 wasn't just a plane. It was a prophecy, a symbol of an industrial juggernaut we were already losing to, even if no one was admitting it. I pulled my coat tighter around me, the night suddenly feeling much colder. The war wasn't just being fought in the skies anymore. It was being decided in factories thousands of miles away. And tonight, standing here, staring at this flying milk bottle, I realized how far behind we truly were. The real question now was, could we catch up? Or was this the beginning of the end? The morning sun struggled to break through the stubborn gray haze hanging over Ashford Airfield as I made my way back to the hangar. The P-47 sat there, an awkward titan, its bulk somehow both comical and terrifying. But as I watched, I could almost hear it whispering secrets of power and resilience that we were miles from understanding. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of oil, grease, and that familiar metallic tang that clung to every corner of the workshop. My assistant, Margaret, sharp-minded and with a gaze that could cut through any technical problem, was already there, her auburn hair tied back in a neat bun, a few rebellious strands escaping to frame her striking face. She wore a fitted navy blue coverall, sleeves rolled up to reveal toned forearms dusted with smudges of grease. Around her neck hung a delicate silver chain, the pendant catching the stark overhead light, a quiet contrast to her rugged surroundings. "Morning, Edward," she said, eyes twinkling with a mix of curiosity and concern. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "More like an industrial apocalypse," I replied, dropping my bag and pulling out my notebook. "This Thunderbolt's engine is a beast beyond anything we've faced. And not just the engine, The whole design philosophy behind this thing is unsettling. Margaret folded her arms, tilting her head. Unsettling how? I pulled up the sketches I'd made the night before, pointing at the intricate lines of the turbocharger system. Look at this. The Americans are mass-producing precision-machined parts that require tolerances we can't maintain. They built this machine to take punishment, to be repaired quickly, and to dominate the skies at altitudes where our fighters are barely breathing. She raised an eyebrow, a playful smirk tugging at her lips. Sounds like they've been taking engineering lessons from tanks. I chuckled, the tension easing for a moment. More like they combined the tank's armor with a rocket engine, and somehow made it fly. Margaret's gaze shifted to the damage reports I'd brought. So it's heavy, durable, and fast. What's the catch? There has to be a catch. I sighed and ran a hand through my hair, already thinning from stress. The catch is that we can't build anything like it. Our factories are struggling just to keep producing Spitfires and Hurricanes. We don't have the raw materials, the precision tools, or the manpower. And even if we did, it would take years to catch up. Margaret's eyes darkened, the weight of the reality sinking in. So what do we do? Keep throwing pilots at a machine we can't match? That's a death sentence. I nodded slowly. Exactly. And the worst part? The brass won't listen. They want victories, not inconvenient truths. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. You're not the only one worried about this, Edward. There's talk among the pilots. They call the Thunderbolt the flying fortress. Say it's like trying to punch through a brick wall while your gloves are made of paper. I smiled grimly. At least they've got a sense of humor left. Margaret glanced at her watch. I need to get back to the engine overhaul, but keep me posted. If you find any weaknesses in this beast, I want to know. As she turned, the silver pendant caught the light again, shimmering like a secret promise. I couldn't help but wonder if that promise was hope, or just another reminder of how far we were falling behind. Outside, the P-47's shadow stretched long across the tarmac, looming like a silent judge over an industry on the brink of collapse. And in that shadow, I felt the crushing weight of a war being lost. Not in battle, but in the cold, unyielding realm of steel and sweat. But even as the day wore on, a nagging question gnawed at me. Was this Thunderbolt a herald of inevitable defeat, or could there still be a way to turn the tide? If so, it would require more than machines and math. It would need daring, cunning, and maybe a touch of madness. The late afternoon sun cast a golden glow over Ashford Airfield, turning the sleek metal of the P-47's wings into molten silver. I stood beside it, notebook in hand, my mind racing through every detail I'd uncovered. But the aircraft wasn't the only thing demanding my attention tonight. Margaret returned from the workshop, wiping grease from her hands with a rag. Her navy coveralls dust-streaked but clinging in a way that accentuated her athletic frame. Her dark eyes held a spark I hadn't seen before, determination mixed with a hint of rebellion. Edward, she said quietly, I've been thinking, maybe it's time we take this beyond numbers and reports. Maybe we need to see how this thing performs in action. I raised an eyebrow, intrigued. You mean, a test flight? She smirked. Not quite, but close enough. I have a contact, Tommy Wright, former RAF pilot, now working with intelligence. He's managed to get a few rides in captured enemy planes. If anyone can get us a first-hand account of the Thunderbolt's strengths and weaknesses, it's him. A thrill ran through me. Finally, some real insight beyond cold calculations. Can he fly it? Margaret shrugged. No, but he can get close. And he's got the eye of a hawk. That evening, we met Tommy in a dimly lit pub in nearby Canterbury. The place smelled of spilled ale and smoke, filled with the low murmur of men unwinding from the war's relentless grind. Tommy was a lean man in his early 30s, with a crooked grin and a twinkle in his steel blue eyes. He wore a leather jacket that looked like it had seen more dogfights than medals. So, you want to know what it's like to face the Thunderbolt? He said, lighting a cigarette. Well, it's not exactly a ballerina, but it hits like a sledgehammer. I leaned in. Tell me everything. He took a drag, exhaling smoke that curled like ghostly warnings. Flying one of these beasts is like wrestling a bull with jet engines strapped on. Clunky on the ground, but once you're up, it's a different story. The cockpit's tight, no frills, but everything you need. The canopy's thick, armored glass that makes you feel like a prisoner, but it saves your hide when the bullets start flying. I pictured the pilot, a man confined in a steel cocoon, muscles tense, heart pounding. The thought stirred something fierce in me. War wasn't just machines. It was men trapped inside them, fighting for survival. Tommy chuckled darkly. You'd think all that weight would slow it down, but no. That engine, it roars like a lion and pulls the plane through the sky like a freight train on wings. And that turbocharger? It's a cheat code for altitude. The Thunderbolt laughs at thin air while we're gasping for breath. Margaret exchanged a glance with me, her eyes narrowing. What about its weaknesses? Every machine has them. Tommy's grin faded. Sure. The beast's big, so it's not exactly nimble. Turns like a barge, and if you get inside its blind spot, you've got a chance. But getting there? That's the trick. Most pilots don't live long enough to find it. I scribbled notes feverishly, the weight of his words settling over me like a storm cloud. The Thunderbolt wasn't invincible, but it demanded respect and fear. As the night deepened, Tommy leaned closer, voice dropping to a whisper. There's something else you should know. Rumor is they're not just building these in hundreds. They've got factories pumping them out like they're making fish and chips. The sheer numbers will drown us if we don't change tactics, and fast. Cold knot twisted in my gut. The numbers I'd seen didn't lie. This wasn't just a battle of skill, it was a battle of industry, and the enemy was winning. I stood up, the pub's stale air suddenly feeling suffocating. Thank you, Tommy. We need every advantage we can get. Outside, rain began to fall, the droplets tapping a relentless rhythm against the window pane. I looked back at the P-47, its silhouette blurred in the downpour. Still a grotesque milk bottle to the untrained eye, but to me, a harbinger of a war we were perilously close to losing. And somewhere deep inside, a question burned hotter than any engine. Could we outsmart a machine built on sheer industrial might? Or were we already racing toward a future where the skies belonged to those who could build the fastest, the toughest, and the most ruthless? The answer wasn't in the numbers anymore. It was in the shadows between them. The next morning, the Ashford airfield buzzed with activity. But beneath the clamor, I felt an unsettling quiet. The P-47 sat under the hangar lights, its polished aluminum gleaming like a silver giant poised for battle. I couldn't shake the feeling that this aircraft was less a machine and more a symbol, a towering challenge staring us down. Margaret joined me near the wingtip, her fingers tracing the edge of the massive 50 caliber machine guns embedded in the sleek wing. Her touch was light, almost reverent, as if she could feel the raw power beneath the metal skin. She wore a simple white blouse tucked into high-waisted trousers, the sleeves rolled just above her elbows, revealing slender wrists adorned with a delicate charm bracelet that caught the sunlight with every movement. The contrast between her elegance and the brutal machinery was striking and somehow fitting. 8 guns, Edward, she said softly. That's a hell of a lot of lead flying your way. I nodded, eyes narrowing. 3,200 rounds total. A continuous burst could shred a bomber in seconds. It's like having an entire arsenal strapped to your wings. Margaret's lips curled into a half-smile. No wonder the pilots call it the Flying Fortress. As we spoke, James approached, carrying a stack of technical blueprints and damage reports. His youthful enthusiasm was infectious, even as the grim reality we faced weighed heavily on us all. Sir, I've been analyzing the damage patterns, he said breathlessly. The P-47's armor and structure absorb hits that would cripple our fighters instantly. It's like trying to punch through a tank with a butter knife. I ran a hand through my hair, feeling the first strands loosen under the pressure. That's exactly the problem, James. Our Spitfires and Hurricanes rely on agility and precision. The Thunderbolt relies on sheer durability and firepower. It's a different kind of beast. Margaret's gaze sharpened. So what's the plan? We can't outgun it, and we can't outlast it. I sighed. flipping through the pages of my notebook. We have to outthink it. Hit-and-run tactics, ambushes at low altitude where its turbocharger can't help. Use the terrain, the weather, anything to negate its advantages. James nodded eagerly. Guerrilla warfare in the sky. I like it. Margaret stepped closer, lowering her voice. But we need better intelligence. Numbers and reports only get us so far. We need eyes inside that cockpit, real-time feedback. I looked at her, admiration mixing with the weight of responsibility. Agreed. That's why Tommy's insights were invaluable. But we need more. Just then, the airfield's radio crackled to life, cutting through the tense atmosphere. A pilot's voice came over, breathless and urgent. Control, we've got incoming bogies. Multiple Thunderbolts heading this way. Altitude 20,000 feet. Fast and steady. My heart pounded as I exchanged glances with Margaret and James. The moment of truth was upon us. I grabbed my coat and hurried toward the briefing room, the echo of my boots on the concrete floor matching the rapid beat of my thoughts. Outside, the sky was a steel-gray canvas, the distant hum of engines growing louder. A reminder that the war was not just numbers on paper, but lives hanging in the balance. As I prepared to deliver the tactical adjustments, a sudden flash of lightning illuminated the horizon, followed by a thunderous roar that shook the ground beneath us. The storm was coming, and with it, a battle that would test every theory, every calculation, every ounce of courage. And somewhere in that storm, the true nature of the Thunderbolt and our fate would be revealed. The storm rolled in fast, dark clouds swallowing the sky as rain hammered the airfield like a relentless drumbeat. Inside the cramped briefing room, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Pilots, engineers, and officers packed tight, eyes flicking nervously between maps and reports spread out on the battered table. I stood before them, the weight of the moment pressing heavy on my shoulders. "Listen up," I began, voice steady despite the storm raging outside. "The P-47 is not just another fighter. It's a flying fortress, built to shrug off damage and deliver a torrent of firepower. Our usual tactics won't work here." A grizzled pilot, his leather jacket worn and stained, scoffed from the back. "So what, we're supposed to dance around it like a ballerina? That beast will crush us." Margaret stepped forward, her voice calm but fierce. "Not dance. Outsmart. Hit it where it's weakest, lower altitudes, tight turns, hit-and-run strikes. Use the weather, the terrain. The Thunderbolt's turbocharger won't help in dense fog or heavy rain." I nodded, adding, "We need to avoid head-on engagements. Their firepower is overwhelming. Instead, focus on slashing attacks from below and behind. Keep moving. Don't give them a steady target." The room buzzed with a mix of skepticism and reluctant acceptance. I caught James's eye, his youthful face set with determination. "It's not perfect," I admitted, "but it's the best chance we have." As the meeting broke up, I lingered by the window, watching the rain blur the runway. The P-47 sat silent, its bulk looming even in the storm. I thought of the pilots who'd face it, men I barely knew, flying machines that might as well have been death traps. Margaret appeared beside me, her damp hair clinging to her neck, a stray lock falling sensuously over her collarbone. "You think these tactics will work?" I hesitated, then replied, "They have to. We don't have the luxury of failure." She gave me a sharp look, then smiled faintly. "Well, if anyone can turn a milk bottle into a missile, it's you, Edward." Her words warmed me against the chill of doubt. "Let's hope so." Later that evening, as the storm abated, I returned to the hangar. The P-47 gleamed under the harsh lights, scars from battle etched into its skin like badges of survival. I traced the lines of its wings, imagining the stories they held, the dogfights, the narrow escapes, the deadly firestorms. James approached, holding a set of photos from recent sorties. "These show the damage the Thunderbolts took during their last mission. They're tough, but not invincible." I studied the images. Holes punched through wings, bullet-riddled fuselages, engines still roaring despite the wounds. They're built to take a beating, but every machine has its breaking point. Suddenly, a sharp knock echoed from the hangar doors. I opened them to find a courier, soaked from the rain, clutching a sealed envelope. The insignia marked it clearly, Top Secret Intelligence from London. My hands trembled slightly as I broke the seal and unfolded the report. The words jumped off the page. American production rates were increasing exponentially. Hundreds more Thunderbolts were rolling off assembly lines every month. The war in the air was tipping further and further against us. I swallowed hard, the bitter truth settling like ice in my veins. This was no longer just about tactics or engineering. It was a race against time and industry, a race we were dangerously close to losing. As I looked back at the P-47, now a silent sentinel in the quiet hangar, I felt a cold certainty. The battle for the skies was far from over, but the war for survival had already begun. And somewhere, in the shadows of these revelations, a darker secret waited. One that could change everything we thought we knew about the enemy and ourselves. The days that followed blurred into a relentless rhythm of work, worry, and whispered conversations in shadowed corners of the airfield. The rain had settled into a persistent drizzle, casting a dull sheen over Ashford and soaking through to the bones of everyone who called it home. I spent long hours poring over blueprints and damage reports, trying to piece together any weakness in the Thunderbolt's seemingly invincible armor. One afternoon, Margaret appeared at my cluttered desk, her striking green eyes sharp beneath dark lashes, a mischievous glint playing in them. She wore a fitted olive-green blouse, the top buttons undone just enough to hint at the delicate curve of her neck, and a pencil skirt that flirted with modesty and allure. Around her wrist, a slim leather strap held a small stopwatch, ticking away like the countdown to some unseen explosion. "Edward," she said, voice low, "I think I found something." I looked up, heart skipping. "What is it?" She slid a worn folder across the table. Reports from recent engagements, detailed notes on damage sustained, pilot debriefs. The Thunderbolt's armor is heavy, but it's concentrated around the cockpit and engine. The wings and rear fuselage are less protected. Multiple pilots report that concentrated fire from behind can disable the controls. I leaned in, tracing the lines on the diagrams. That fits with what Tommy said about its sluggish turning. If we can get behind it, we might have a chance. Margaret smiled, a slow, dangerous smile. Exactly, but it's easier said than done. Getting into that blind spot without getting shredded is the challenge. I ran a hand through my hair, feeling the weight of the stakes. We need to develop tactics that exploit this, coordinated attacks, distractions, maybe even decoys. She nodded, her eyes locking with mine. And better training. Pilots need to know the weaknesses as well as the strengths. We have to turn fear into strategy. Our conversation was interrupted by James, who arrived breathless, clutching a radio handset. "Sir, there's a priority message coming through. From London." I took the handset, the voice crackling with urgency. "Edward Clark here." The officer on the other end wasted no time. "Intelligence reports confirm that American factories are increasing production beyond previous estimates. The P-47 is being produced at a rate of over 600 per month now. Additionally, new models with enhanced engines and armaments are entering service." I felt the room tilt slightly, the gravity of the news sinking deep. "Understood. We'll adjust our reports accordingly." As the line went dead, Margaret's hand brushed mine. A brief touch that sent a flicker of warmth through the cold war of facts and figures. "We're running out of time." I nodded. "Yes, and the brass still won't hear it." That night, as the airfield settled into uneasy silence, I wandered back to the hangar. The P-47 rested there like a sleeping giant, its scars a testament to countless battles. I circled it slowly, fingers grazing the cold metal, imagining the pilot inside. Alone, encased in armor, relying on brute force and sheer will to survive. The war was no longer just about men and machines. It was about the crushing weight of industry, the unforgiving calculus of resources and production. And in that cold math, I feared we were losing. But beneath that fear, a stubborn ember of hope remained. Hope that with knowledge, cunning, and perhaps a little madness, we might still rewrite the story. As I turned to leave, a faint noise caught my attention. A subtle metallic click from within the fuselage. I froze, heart pounding. Was it just the settling of an old machine? Or something else? In the shadows, secrets waited to be uncovered, and I was about to find out just how deep the rabbit hole went. The hangar was nearly empty as I stood there, the silence broken only by the distant drip of water from the rain streaking the roof. That faint metallic click echoed again, subtle but deliberate. I stepped closer to the P-47, heart hammering in my chest like a drum in a war march. The aircraft's massive frame loomed over me, cold and unyielding, its polished skin reflecting the dim light in fractured patterns. I circled the fuselage slowly, eyes scanning every seam, every panel, searching for the source of the sound. My fingers traced the rivets along the wing root, then slid over the heavy-duty access panels near the engine cowling. The noise came again, this time from the rear fuselage, near the tail section. Kneeling, I examined the panel just beneath the rudder control surfaces. My gloved hand pressed against the metal, feeling for any irregularities. Suddenly, a hidden latch sprung free under my touch, revealing a small concealed compartment. Inside, I found a bundle of papers, yellowed with age but surprisingly intact. My breath caught. Intelligence reports? Secret schematics? I carefully unfolded the documents, the pages covered in detailed notes and diagrams, handwritten in an unfamiliar script but with symbols and markings I recognized from my training. It was a technical manual, but not just any manual. This was a prototype blueprint for a new turbocharger design, far more advanced than anything publicly known. Margaret's voice startled me from behind. "Edward? What have you found?" I looked up to see her silhouette framed in the hangar entrance, her expression a mixture of awe and concern. She stepped closer, the soft rustle of her skirt the only sound in the cavernous space. "Show me." Together, we pored over the documents, deciphering what we could. The new design promised even greater altitude performance, increased engine efficiency, and enhanced durability. It was a leap forward that could render our current tactical adjustments obsolete. "This changes everything?" I whispered, the weight of the revelation pressing down like a stone on my chest. "If they're already working on this, it means the Thunderbolt we're facing now is just the beginning." Margaret's eyes narrowed, determination hardening her features. "Then we need to get ahead of them. Find a way to counter this before it's too late." A sudden noise from outside broke our focus. A hurried footsteps approaching, the sharp bark of a voice. James appeared, rain-soaked and breathless. "Sir, we've received word. Another squadron intercepted enemy communications. They're planning a major aerial offensive, deploying new fighter models equipped with advanced turbochargers. The skies over Britain won't be safe much longer." I exchanged a grim glance with Margaret. The enemy wasn't just building machines, they were evolving, innovating at a pace that threatened to overwhelm us. The hangar lights flickered as a distant thunderclap rolled overhead, echoing the storm inside my mind. We were racing against a war machine that didn't sleep, didn't falter, and wasn't afraid to push the boundaries. And somewhere, in the heart of that machine, lay a secret so dangerous it could change the course of the entire conflict. I closed the manuals carefully, tucking them into my coat. "We need to warn command, and prepare for what's coming." Margaret nodded, a spark of fierce resolve lighting her eyes. "This isn't just a battle for the skies anymore. It's a battle for survival." As the rain intensified outside, I felt the weight of the coming storm, not just in the clouds, but in the steel and fire waiting to tear through the fragile hope we clung to. And in the shadows, the question lingered. Could we face a future where the enemy's machines were always one step ahead? Or was the war already lost, hidden behind the polished wings of a captured fighter? The answer lay somewhere beyond the storm, and I was determined to find it. The night air was thick with tension as I made my way back to the officers' quarters, the stolen technical manuals tucked securely beneath my coat. The rain had finally ceased, leaving the world slick and glistening under the pale moonlight. Ashford Airfield was quiet now, but the silence was fragile, like the calm before a bomb detonates. Margaret walked beside me, her footsteps soft but purposeful. Her dark curls, damp from the lingering mist, framed a face set with steely determination. Tonight, she wore a simple yet elegant dress, the kind that hugged her curves just enough to hint at the strength beneath, paired with low-heeled black pumps that clicked softly on the wet pavement. Her silver charm bracelet sparkled faintly, a subtle reminder of the delicate balance between grace and grit. "We can't keep this to ourselves," she said quietly. "The brass needs to know what we've uncovered. If the Americans are already working on turbochargers that outclass the ones in the Thunderbolt, then the war in the air is about to escalate beyond anything we've prepared for." I nodded, thoughts swirling like the fog around us. "But you know how the higher-ups are. They don't want to hear bad news, especially if it means admitting we're behind." Margaret gave a wry smile. "Maybe it's time we stop asking for permission." We slipped inside the dimly lit building, the scent of old wood and cigarette smoke thick in the air. The officers' mess was nearly empty, save for a few weary men nursing cups of bitter tea. I found my commanding officer, Colonel Harris, seated alone, poring over maps and reports by a flickering oil lamp. "Colonel," I began, voice low but urgent, "we have information that could change everything." He looked up, eyes sharp beneath heavy brows. "Clark, I've seen a lot of reports in my time. What makes this one so special?" I took a deep breath and laid the stolen manuals and decrypted notes on the table. "These documents detail a new American turbocharger design, far more advanced than anything we've encountered. It promises greater altitude performance, engine efficiency, and durability. They're already deploying fighters equipped with these systems." Colonel Harris's face hardened. "If this is true, it means we're facing an enemy that's not just outproducing us, but out-engineering us." "Exactly," I said. "Our current tactics will soon be obsolete. We need to adapt quickly." He leaned back, steepling his fingers. "This will shake the command staff to its core. They'll want proof, data, not just raw intelligence." Margaret stepped forward, voice steady. "We have pilots' accounts, damage reports, and now these manuals. It's a comprehensive picture." The colonel studied us both for a long moment. "Prepare a full briefing. Tomorrow at dawn, you'll present your findings to the High Command." As we left the mess, the weight of the coming day pressed down on me. We were about to challenge not just the enemy, but the stubborn pride and denial within our own ranks. Outside, the first light of dawn began to break, casting pale fingers over the airfield. The P-47 waited silently, its polished frame gleaming with cold promise, a reminder of the war machine we faced, and the battle looming on the horizon. And as the sky brightened, a chilling thought settled. Could knowledge alone be enough to change the fate already written in steel and fire? The grand hall of the command bunker was cold and cavernous, filled with men in pressed uniforms whose eyes weighed heavy with skepticism and the burden of impossible decisions. I stood before them, Margaret at my side, clutching the stolen manuals and the mountain of reports we had gathered. The air was thick with anticipation, the kind that makes your throat dry and your voice catch in your chest. I cleared my throat, forcing calm into my voice. "Gentlemen, the P-47 Thunderbolt is not merely a captured enemy plane. It is a symbol of a war we are already losing, the war of industry, technology, and sheer production capacity." I laid out our findings. The advanced turbocharger designs, the engine's staggering horsepower, the aircraft's armor and firepower, and most damningly, the relentless American production rates. Eyes shifted uncomfortably around the room. Some faces betrayed disbelief. Others, quiet dread. One general, a stout man with a scar running down his cheek, barked. "So you're saying our pilots are flying hand-me-downs against machines twice their size? That our factories can't keep up?" I nodded. "That is exactly what I'm saying." Margaret stepped forward, her voice steady but fierce. "We must change tactics. Avoid head-on confrontations, focus on agility, exploit the Thunderbolt's weaknesses in the rear fuselage. But most importantly, we must acknowledge our industrial limitations and adapt our strategy accordingly." A tense silence followed, broken only by the ticking of a distant clock. Then the highest-ranking officer leaned forward, voice low and grave. "Your report is comprehensive, Clark, but the High Command fears that spreading this will demoralize our men and the nation. They prefer hope, even if it's false." I felt the sting of bitter truth. Hope without reality is a fragile shield. We need to prepare for the true nature of the war we face. The meeting adjourned with no formal decision, but the message was clear. Uncomfortable truths would be buried. Our recommendations filed away, dismissed as defeatism. Margaret and I exchanged a glance heavy with frustration and resolve. Outside, the cold wind whipped through the stone corridors, carrying with it the distant roar of engines, thunderbolts on patrol, harbingers of a future slipping through our fingers. As we left the bunker, a shadow detached itself from the darkness. A courier, clutching an envelope sealed with the emblem of British intelligence. I broke the seal and unfolded the message inside. It was a warning. A new American fighter, the P-51 Mustang, was entering combat. Sleeker, faster, with the range to escort bombers deep into enemy territory. Its engine was a Packard-built Merlin, a secret weapon combining British engineering and American production might. The war in the skies was exhilarating, moving beyond anything we could control. As the courier vanished into the night, I realized that the battle was no longer just about machines or tactics. It was about facing a future where the enemy's industrial might and innovation threatened to crush us beneath an avalanche of steel. And beneath that crushing weight, the question loomed. Could we find a way to fight back? Or were we already witnessing the slow, inevitable fall of an empire built on pride and denial? The answer lay hidden in the horizon, where the thunder of engines met the fading light of hope. And somewhere, deep inside the heart of the enemy's war machine, a secret waited, a secret that could change everything. The dawn broke over Ashford with a cold, pale light that seemed to seep into every corner of the airfield, casting long shadows across the tarmac where the captured P-47 sat like a silent sentinel. I stood alone beside it, the weight of the past weeks pressing down on me like the heavy steel skin of the aircraft itself. The war was changing faster than we could adapt, and the truth we uncovered was a threat not just to strategy, but to the fragile morale that held us together. Margaret's words echoed in my mind, the urgent need to face reality, no matter how grim. But as I stared at the Thunderbolt's battered fuselage, I realized that the real battle wasn't just in the skies anymore. It was a war of wills, a clash between truth and denial, between the cold logic of engineering and the fiery pride of a nation unwilling to admit its limits. Suddenly, the radio crackled to life, breaking the silence. A pilot's voice, tense but resolute, reported an incoming formation of enemy fighters, P-51 Mustangs, sleek and deadly, closing fast. The new threat had arrived, faster and more elusive than the Thunderbolt. I felt a chill run down my spine. The enemy's edge was sharpening, and our window to respond was closing. As I turned away from the aircraft, a folded piece of paper slipped from beneath the landing gear. Curious, I picked it up and unfolded the note inside. The handwriting was hurried, almost indecipherable, but one phrase stood out. The war is lost not in battle, but in the factories that never cease. A bitter smile crossed my lips. The truth we'd found was simple and brutal. Industrial might, relentless production, and unyielding innovation would decide the fate of nations. But even in that grim certainty, a spark of defiance flickered. A reminder that even the smallest act of courage, the quietest voice of reason, could echo through the darkest nights. I folded the note carefully and tucked it into my pocket, my gaze lifting to the horizon where the first glint of enemy fighters pierced the morning sky. The war was far from over. The skies would be stained with fire and steel, dreams and despair. And somewhere in that chaos, the secrets we uncovered might yet change everything, or be buried forever beneath the weight of history. As the engines roared to life and the first planes took to the air, I whispered to the rising sun, "This is only the beginning." And with that, the battle for the future began.